We welcome in Troy Westwood from TSN in Winnipeg. He's back in the bedroom, and we thank you for joining us again here, Troy. Rod's not here. He's in Texas, but you got me, Peter Mills, and Craig Smith. And the first thing I wanted to talk to you about was not the football game, but I wanted to talk about the hockey. And your tweet was a subject of conversation for us in hour one. You said just simply Patrik Laine or Matthew Tkachuk. And I picked Matthew Tkachuk, 9 goals, 9 assists. He's having a great season, a couple of great overtime games. And what is Patrik at now? 3 goals on the season after, a bit of a hot start. What's going on in Winnipeg?
Well, it's interesting, man, because overall he's got 3 goals and 11 assists for 14 points in 14 games, I believe is the what he's clipping along at. So he's been hacked on in the past for not being enough of a playmaker or being very one-dimensional. So I don't have a problem at all with. I don't care if a guy gets goals or assists, right? They both essentially need to happen to put the numbers on the scoreboard that you want. But I mean, even in a larger sense, I know Patrik Laine is gifted as a goal scorer and has that shot that very often you'll hear like Paul Maurice saying one of the top 3 shots he's ever seen and yada yada. But boy, Matthew Tkachuk and the game that he brings to the table, the level of sandpaper, the 200-foot thing, and man, I just love his game. And I think I asked the question the last year, it might even been the year previous to that, if right now, if you could grab one of these 2 guys to start a Stanley Cup best-of-7 series, who would you want? I don't know, man. I'm leaning towards Tkachuk. I just love his game.
Here's my thing about Patrik Laine, and I've always thought he's a great talent. He can shoot the puck well, does these things. But I saw an interview. I think it was a TSN feature, actually, and he got a new tattoo, right? Was it a lion that he got on the tattoo? Which is, I think, that's the symbol on the Finnish jersey, right? On the Finnish team.
Yeah.
And they asked him about this tattoo, and what does it mean, and where does it come from? And he didn't have an answer, and all he said was, I just think it looks cool. And I guess it's part of the Finnish team. And to me, that kind of made me think, what? Because anybody who's great or anybody who's going to be the best at what they do, it seems like everything they do is for a reason and for a purpose. And so anything they put on their body, it's all means something, and it's all very, focused on a greater thing. And this just felt like a guy who just maybe wasn't that dialed in. I got it because it looked cool. I do it just because I don't know, feel like it. Is that kind of am I reading into that too much, or is that kind of the guy?
Well, I don't know about that as it relates to, the decision for a tattoo, man. But the one thing that I've always been a little bit bothered by, and this is larger than Patrik Laine in sports in general, I've got a problem with athletes that you need to compel their best game out of, and that's the one thing. Matthew Tkachuk, you don't need to prod him to get his best. Patrik Laine last year was not applying himself, didn't give you the level of attention to detail necessary to be a good, strong overall player. And it's always bugged me when you've got to press buttons or beg a player to give you their best. I don't care how naturally gifted they are and this God-given skill that they've got, having to compel great spirit and desire to perform at a high level out of an athlete, that just inherently bugs me. I wouldn't want to be in a foxhole with someone like that. And when you're looking around the locker room, whatever sport that you're playing at, whatever level that you're playing, man, give me the guy that's going to give you every single thing that they've got in those situations. And to me, a guy like Matthew Tkachuk embodies that. And people are hoping, although his level of play is at a higher level this year, people are hoping that Patrik Laine matures into that. And that's always something of concern to me.
Yeah, Matthew Tkachuk's the guy who's going around that locker room shoving the cattle prod into everybody else, not needing it himself. But to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, as they open a practice yesterday, we've learned that Zach Collaros taking first-team reps. You got on Winnipeg, on the Jets?
No, the Bombers.
Okay, good. We're going to get to the Bombers. As Zach Collaros opens up as taking the first-team reps, Strevler's on the field. Should we read into that already on day one that it's going to be Zach Collaros and we can sign and seal he's going to start on the weekend?
Yeah, I think he's going to start. I think that's pretty much insured at this point in time. And I'm really intrigued to see to what degree imagination is used here. Miller said he practiced, but he said he's not at 100%. And a guy like Chris Strevler, I don't know how many needles or shots of whatever or different colored pills he's going to take, but I would suspect that he's going to be ready to go on Sunday. And I'm just like, what kind of package has Paul LaPolice concocted here for Collaros and Strevler? I got a feeling that Zach Collaros, boy, he looked good in that final game of the regular season. And now he's got 2 weeks to become more familiar with that playbook. And it's almost like he's on a mission from God here. To a lot of people were wondering and almost hopeful that he wouldn't play anymore because of the head injury concussion situation. But he's trying to reestablish himself as a viable starter in this league. So I love the motivation at work. Boy, he looked poised. It was amazing the amount of time. I know he was in for 2 snaps earlier this year, but it was really a year since he'd been in a starting position, and he had 2 days of practice with the first team before that last start against Calgary, and he looked really solid. So I think, and he's got a 3-game win streak going on against the Stamps. I think Zach Collaros is going to have himself a day out in Calgary. I know the weather conditions are questionable, but I can't believe the Bombers are 6.5-point dogs here, man. I think it sets up pretty darn well for them as a team.
Yeah, I really do. Craig, do you want to?
Yeah, hey, this is Craig Smith. Crazy year for the Bombers. Obviously, they were the number 1 team, and then, obviously Nichols and Strevler and et cetera. Can you see Winnipeg going into Calgary and winning that game?
Absolutely, I can. And, I Bo Levi Mitchell has been very successful. I think over the last, there's a big chunk of games where his quarterback rating averages 115. And over the last couple of games, he's been able to throw the pill around pretty good. The good thing is, I guess if you're the Bombers, is they've really, like Calgary with the number rush game in the CFL and the Bombers with the premier run stop. So they really make Calgary one-dimensional. And I, if Willie Jefferson has himself any sort of a game, if the defensive front does anything there, Calgary's going to score 30-ish points probably, right? Mm-hmm. You would think, depending on the conditions. But boy, I think the Bombers, when they have, if they have Chris Strevler, Andrew Harrison, the run game of the Bombers that averaged almost 150 yards a game, and now this is complemented with a guy like Zach Collaros. When Matt Nichols was at the helm, that offense was pretty dynamic. I think Zach Collaros is inherently a more productive quarterback throwing the ball than Matt Nichols is. And I think this offense right now, with the complement of Chris Strevler, if he's ready to go, and that run game, I think that they can hang with Calgary. And I think it sets up as a remarkable game. And I don't know how anyone wouldn't think that when in the 3 games this year, the average margin of victory between these 2 teams has been 2.3 points. This could be an all-timer coming up on Sunday.
Yeah, you give me 6.5 points on the Bombers. I'm taking that all day long. Absolutely. Troy, let's put this to bed, the Andrew Harris thing once and for all if we can. I don't know if that's ever going to be the case, but he's an all-star. I'm okay with it. I think the media said, okay, we did our thing. He's not representing us for an award, but his season is an all-star season, so he gets that. I'm happy with that. I think it's time to move on, and he's served his time. But where are you at in terms of Andrew Harris being an all-star in the CFL?
Well, I'll just put it out there. I love Andrew Harris as a guy away from the field and watching him play, man. I just absolutely love him. The way his approach to the game and the way he puts it all out there. I love watching him. But I'd said that to me, it would do the CFL a world of good and they should have done this prior to the voting for the awards. The same way they changed a rule mid-season a year or 2 ago, right? It was the right thing to do, and they should have done it here. I think it's best for the CFL. If you test positive for a PED, then staple to that should be that you are not allowed to be nominated for any of the player awards. And that should include the All-Stars. I know there was a group, Mike O'Shea said that he voted for Andrew Harris to win the Canadian or the most outstanding player. And to me, even if I'm Andrew Harris, I want this to go to bed. I want it to go away. And I know it never will. People will think of it all the time now when his name's mentioned. But had he have been nominated as an outstanding player or the best Canadian, that would have been, the debate just gets a bunch of gas thrown on it. And people are talking about Andrew Harrison, PDs, all the rest of it. Not getting nominated, I thought, sort of pushed that aside. And there was a group of 4, I think, reporters in Winnipeg that made the decision that because he tested positive, he shouldn't be nominated. To me, if I'm the CFL, I want to control that narrative. I don't want to leave it in the hands of the media, whether it's in this market or across Canada. I don't want them to make the moral judgment on it. I want control of that if I'm Randy Ambrosie. I can't believe that the CFL didn't step up prior to the nominations. And even right now, I can't believe they didn't step up prior to the All-Star votes. So it's my understanding it's Canada, the football writers of Canada are the ones that voted on this, along with maybe coaches and some others. But to me, how do you lock him out of the awards and now he's an all-star? Like, doesn't that contradict one another, that he's accepted in one aspect for the awards, and being an all-star is an award in all reality? So that's kind of kooky to me. And if I was Randy Ambrosie, I would have made it that he was not able to be nominated for an all-star, or as player awards, just because I think it shines best on us as the CFL. And I think deep down Andrew Harris would probably agree with that.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. That's a great point. And finally, the situation around Mike O'Shea, because head coaching vacancies is the topic this week, with Rick Campbell out in Ottawa and Devon Claybrooks out in BC. I heard the reports when it comes to Mike O'Shea. He what did he say? He said that he didn't turn down multiple contract offers from the Bombers, which was kind of reported. But what are you hearing out of that situation in terms of the future of the Bombers head coach?
Well, the last I heard was him stating a quote that he wanted to stay in Winnipeg. Now, Mike O'Shea is very good at dealing with the media, and for him to say anything else would be a mistake, right? So I don't know how sincere that would be. It's really hard for me to imagine, with his good buddy Pinball Clemens in Toronto and his son going to school in Guelph and all the roots that he's got in that part of the country. Boy, oh boy, I would be very surprised if he doesn't want to take advantage of that situation in Toronto. But hey, if he wants what they've done here with Wade Miller, Kyle Walters, and Mike O'Shea, what they've done there with that triangle of power here, it's pretty impressive stuff. And I hope Mike O'Shea wants to stay. But in the end, I'm going to be pretty surprised if he does, just because of all of the things that come into play with him going back home to Toronto under Pinball Clemens. That kind of seems like a little bit Disney storybook sort of thing, and I'll be surprised if that ultimately doesn't develop.
Yeah, it really does. There's so many things that could play out. You talk about Rick Campbell maybe in Edmonton or BC, and where does Jason Moss go, and Kahari Jones back to, and we're going to need to really draw this out on a map to make sense of it all, but it's going to be exciting, and an exciting week for you. Enjoy the game on Sunday, and appreciate you taking some time today, Troy.
All the best, boys. Let's hope we see each other in a couple of weeks.
Wouldn't that be something? I talk about these storylines. Vernon Adams going back in to Hamilton with a chance to go to the Grey Cup, and Zach Collaros coming back in here with a chance to play a playoff game at Mosaic. It's fun.
It would be spectacular, man.
Great stuff. Be well, Troy, and we'll catch you up soon.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.